listening to the Medic Materials Podcast, hosted by Mike Turek, Emily Yates, Kelsey Coons, and Gerard Cuomo. Each month, we discuss EMS news, medical science, and review actual EMS calls, bringing many educational opportunities to the listener. Portions of the calls have been altered to protect the privacy and identity of all involved.
Hello and welcome everyone back to the Medic Materials Podcast. Mr. Piglet, Phil Foundation, in the house today. Let's drop Phil's intro. Can you actually hear the intro now with all the new equipment and stuff? Yeah. Oh, it's so nice. I am loving this new boom arm. I treated myself. Gave you the hand-me-down, Phil. Sorry.
Well, I didn't have any older siblings to get hand-me-downs from, so it's like the same thing.
All right. Well, that doesn't make me feel that bad then. Mr. Maha, how are you, sir?
Oh, I've had better days, but doing pretty good.
I guess that's fair.
Got a few extra days off from work, but you know.
Hey, that's always a plus. I mean, you can't be too hard on yourself when you are on vacation, even if it's a forced vacation or whatever. So, it's weird that it's Tuesday.
Why are you stroking that mushroom?
I got a friend with me. See.
Oh, okay. All right.
I know, right? It's it's so weird because you can't see the puppy. It literally looks like you're stroking the mushroom shaft. Yep, just keep on doing it.
It's pleasurable to me.
Oh, gotta love it. So we're gonna be talking about we're going to have a discussion about a patient population that I think we have fairly neglected here on the show for a long time. And that is those with special challenges. So, your MR patients, your, weird LVAD patients, your super obese patients, right? Your difficult airway patients, or maybe they have an airway device at home and stuff like that. So I think bringing up this kind of discussion is going to be beneficial because we can kind of, throw ideas around about different ways that we should be evaluating these patients, or maybe treating these patients, or just, kind of dealing with these patients. So I think it's going to be an interesting discussion. Overall, I've been waiting to have this. I was hoping we could do a call review for a special patient. That just didn't happen in the time frame, but I think this will also lend itself to some good information. So, before we get started, I will do Kelsey's job since she's not here again today. And, I will do our rate check. So, guys, we have seen a record number of downloads of this podcast recently. And as we near a fucking miraculous 20,000 downloads of this show, I want to urge each of you to continue to spread the word about this show. It has been wonderful what you guys have been doing, sharing across social media. Keep it up. Tell your friends, your coworkers, put it on in your truck. Make your partner listen to it while you're on standby or going to a call. What better way to get ready for a cardiac arrest than to hear us? I think that would be hilarious. That should be like the new, Code 99 song, is just turning on us. Or if you, don't want to tell people about the show, go on to whatever listening platform you guys do use and rate and review the show. That is big. It's how we get ranked, how people can find us in search. If all of that is too much, work for you guys, and you want to get out of a little bit of work, become a Patreon. It's $5 a month. You get more podcasts, you get CME credit, and you get some crazy ass calls that are coming up. One including a GSW and another including a bear. We'll just leave it at that. A bear. It's going to be very exciting. So sign up for that. That link is down in the description below. But hey, if you're really allergic to work, guys, there is a donation link down in the down below. If you want to tip the stream or the show, you can use the stream donation link, or you can buy us a cup of coffee and send a cash donation that way. All of that helps to support the man bun that is the Phil Foundation.
Right. Maybe you get a freaking haircut.
That's right. We can buy him a new damn haircut. Our brand new Medic Materials merch page is up, so make sure that you're going on to medicmaterials.com/merch. You can buy the Cronuts, which you can see right there behind me. Stickers, water bottles. I just bought a bunch of shirts that now I'm going to start wearing those on the stream, so you can kind of see what we have. And lastly, shout outs this month to our listeners in Maine and Guatemala. Thank you all for continuing to listen to our fucking craziness, because that's all I can explain it as.
Do we have hoodies yet? Come on. I need a hoodie.
I have been looking into hoodies. The problem with the hoodies, all right, is not that they're expensive to make or of poor quality or whatever like that. It is that I love shirts that have front designs and back designs on them, and hoodies don't have that. They only have front design. And that just, I hate that. It makes me bitter. It makes me angry. So I'm still looking into hoodies. We do have, I think, some long sleeve options on there. Lots of stickers, lots of t-shirts. Stuff that I've been working with. There's a brand new donuts one. A donut sticker. Guys, I don't even have any in stock yet. They are that new, and they're awesome.
My sticker package.
Huh?
I said I'm still waiting for my sticker package.
I sent some out. Chris is in the stream. He probably got his. WW2 Girl sent me pictures. She got hers. So yeah, I guess you're just gonna be on my next list of people I'll send stickers to. But
I guess you'll just like them more than you like me. That's fine.
well, yeah, it's the hair, man. It's there. But it's one thing.
Respect.
Okay, it's one thing, Phil, for me to like you. You got me tattooed on your arm. All right,
No.
so who likes who more here?
Right.
All right.
No.
Don't.
Before people think I'm like some fucking psychopath,
But you are.
like the guy who shot John Lennon. It is not a tattoo of Mike Turek.
It sure as shit should be.
I could probably get the face covered up a little bit to make it look like yours.
I'm very surprised, Chris, that you didn't get your sticker pack, because I mailed them last week. You should have gotten them, especially since one made it to Maryland before an hour and a half away. So that's, it's the government, it's mail. Why not? It shouldn't work.
Someone probably stole them from his front porch.
The porch pirates stole them. Yep, sorry. You can't have nice things anymore. So guys, leading
Detroit.
leading into this discussion here, I want to start just with, when you guys get a dispatch that might, involve a special, patient population, what do you guys what is the automatic thought process when you're like, oh man, I'm going to, a diff breather that might be on a vent at the house, or a, freaking MR patient or something like that? What do you guys kind of run through your head right off the rip?
I mean, they all have their own little special. I don't want to start off the conversation like that, but they have their own little special things you have to know about. I mean, a lot of them have the parents or their caregivers are a wealth of information. When you get there, you kind of you approach them and say, hey, what do I need to know about this patient? a lot of times. I know I've dealt with a few in certain areas that we've all worked before, that you go there and you can say, like, what medications they on, what medications have you given before I've gotten here, because a lot of times they try to solve the problems before they call you to get there, because they're so well versed in the care for the patient. So by the time they're calling you, then it's
It's typically more problematic
yeah,
than if they had called 3 hours earlier or a half hour earlier or something in that nature.
yeah. So at that point, you're dealing with a whole different slew of problems. I
Uh,
mean, I guess one that comes to mind is there's a family of, without giving too much away, a family of folks that have some seizure problems in an area that we've worked, that they do everything they can before they have to call us, but by the time they call us, they've gone through their diastats, stuff like that. If seizures haven't broken, then we're walking in, we're like, all right, so now we got to go down our path for seizures. And
right. And it's almost, if you have been to one of these homes before, you know the process. You know that if it's a seizure kid, you know that mom's given the diastat or whatever it might be that the kid is on, and you know that the drill is, okay, I gave 1 dose, they didn't stop, I gave 2 doses, okay, now I'm on to my 3rd, and now I'm gonna call, because it's been 25 minutes or a half an hour, and this kid's still, nothing has worked in the home remedy. So you kind of understand what you're walking into a little better. If they are frequent to you, you can go, okay, if I'm getting called, it's got to be starting at this point. I know this is where I'm starting. Phil,
Right.
what kind of runs through your head when going into these kind of calls?
Well, so most of the time with like people with like MR or anything like that, like Down syndrome, something like that, they have, each individual has their own certain like triggers that like send them, they might get like combative, they might, have like those pseudo seizures, stuff like that. Like loud noises might trigger one person, bright, like if the lights are too bright, it might trigger another person. So it's like you have to really, take into account everything, like that all the loud noises on the rig, shit like that. And you have to like actually think and like kind of like tread lightly.
Yeah, I think with that, it kind of lends itself, and we've gotten it in the chat already, is detailed histories, right? These are things that we can find out. And Butch, you already, put it out there that like the caregiver is the wealth of knowledge, right? So we need to take care, or not take care, but we need to take advantage of that caregiver, right? They know more about the condition, at least in the home setting, right? If it's a family member taking care of a daughter or a father or mother or whatever, it's a little bit more specific than it is if it was a home, like a group home or something like that, where here you go, it's just a worker bee and they don't really know anything. Here's their book, here's their, packet of paperwork, and so on and so forth. But with those, specifically those home caregivers, right? They know more about that condition, the treatment, the way we should be operating with this patient than we will ever know. So, finding out where they were and how they can help us, I think, is the best benefit that we have on scene, right? All of our protocols mean nothing if, that caregiver can suction way better than we can, or can operate the LVAD way better than we can, or operate the home vent way better than we can. There's been plenty of times where I walk into like a home vent situation and they're like, yeah, this is going on. I did this, I did that, and it's still not right. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to let you run that vent all the way to the hospital. That is your job. I'm not even going to look at you unless you need it. What do you guys kind of feel about like caregivers? What should we be asking them? And like, is there anything specific that you kind of give leeway to with the caregivers?
I mean, honestly, you kind of said, like, nursing home versus special care facilities. I find a lot of time the special care facilities, like the group homes and stuff, those providers are a lot of times smaller populations. So those care providers know a lot more about those residents than they do at nursing homes. Nursing homes, you go there and it's the usual, not my patient, just got here, vacation, blah blah blah. The excuses. But if you go to the group homes, a lot of times those caregivers and providers know a lot about those patients. They can usually tell you everything. Feeding times, bathroom rotations, whatever. I find that to be more true about those places. So if they want to come with you to the hospital and take care, do certain things for that patient on the way to the hospital, keep that person comfortable, hop on board, because that patient may be more comfortable with that provider in the back of my rig than they are with a guy they've never seen before.
Right. And depending on like what, right. And kind of depending on what their history is, right? So like you might get a patient that is MR and has those triggers and knows this person and can keep them calm, knows how to keep them calm. Whereas we might set them off. Right. So it's almost, beneficial to, hey, yep, I'm going to leave care in your hands unless I have to do something. Right. Phil, what about you with caregivers in general?
So the agency I used to work for, we had a regular, I wouldn't say kid, but like a teenager, maybe 15 or 16, who was on a home ventilator through a trach collar. And I mean, I had gone through, the vent class and all that, but like the amount of knowledge and I guess you could say like troubleshooting that the patient's mother had with their home vent was just astronomically more than I could ever get from a basic ventilator class. So I think it's, if they step in to like do something or, tell you like, hey, just so you know, like you have to do this, then I don't take as much offense to it as like, someone's mother-in-law saying like, oh, well, I'm a nurse at a nursing home, you should do it this way. That shit pisses me off. But like when it's, a special population type of patient, then
yeah, I think we have to give them a lot of leeway, right? They are there specifically to assist us in that sense, like going in, finding out history. Because a lot of times, like a lot of these special patients that have wild and crazy diseases, we have never heard of them before. I couldn't tell you how many countless times I have walked into a house for, something as simple as diff breather. I walk, around the corner and I see this giant hospital bed with somebody that's been in there since 1972. And their caregiver's like, okay, this is Johnny. And I'm like, cool. Hi, Johnny. And Johnny's drooling or whatever. And, I'm like, what kind of history do they have? I'm thinking, all these normal things. And they're rattling off some, disease that 3 people in the world have. And I'm like, what? And then they go into the, Britannica encyclopedia on this one disease because they've dealt with it for 20 years. So, it's a learning experience for us too, right? Like there's times where I have to Google stuff because I don't know what it is. Again,
you'll never have to Google Von Willebrands ever again.
Nope.
You're welcome.
No. And you know what? I'll tell you. So I took your advice and threw that out as the last Friday trivia. And I must say that people were right on top of it. I don't know if they just knew it because they're smarter than me, or if they actually listened to the one podcast. But yep, there were people that were like, "Yep, this is a disease that affects clotting, and they couldn't tell me which clotting factor, but they were like, this affects clotting, and you bleed more with this. And I was like, man, people are on point. So yeah, good for them. They knew more than me. So I kind of want to talk about like specific, if we get to them, I want to talk about 4 specific patient populations within the special challenge population. And the first one being, you don't really think about it like a special challenge, a special population, but the morbidly obese, right? That is a special population, right? We need different tools to take care of them, right? We need different equipment. We need different assessments. You know, we have our own, you know, treatment plans for them and health concerns that they have and safety concerns for providers. Like, do you guys, like, when I think of like the morbidly obese patients, I kind of think back in early in my career when I was working city EMS, we had a bariatric rig, and we took care of some very large patients. And extrication was always the hardest thing with these patients. One of them lived on the 3rd floor walk up, and literally you would need the fire department's tower ladder to come in. You'd put the patient in a Stokes basket, put the Stokes basket into the tower ladder bucket, raise it up, and put it into the house that way. That was literally the only way this person ever got in or out of their home. Right? So that's a challenge, right? Now we have to sit there and go, okay, how do we deal with this? So like when you guys are thinking obese patients, right? The morbidly obese, the 500-pound plus patients. Like, is there something that you guys stress over more with those patients? Is it their size? Is it the treatment plans? Is it like their health problems? Like, what do you guys kind of go to?
Definitely, for me, it's more of like a treatment plan. You know, like, especially like respiratory distress and like failure. You know, their airway is going to be super fucking, it's going to be non-existent. I mean, you know, no neck, overweight, their tongue's probably fucking flopping all over. So it's,
right,
you know,
like
really,
intubation's going to be awful.
yeah, even like the simplest thing is like finding a vein. Like I've done, you know, 24s in the finger, like in the thumb on people, you know, 600 plus.
Yep.
I mean, you know, and I always get fucking eye rolls from a nurse, but I was like, fuck it, I got it, didn't I?
Right.
It's something.
I couldn't tell you how many times, because like when you get that big, right, as an ALS provider, now we're looking at it going, okay, I need access on this patient, right? You roll over their arms and it's just 4 inches of adipose tissue and fat. You don't see anything. You don't feel anything. It's all like there's nothing there. Their legs are even bigger, right? So like lots of times when I'm looking for access on that big of a patient, I go automatically to my secondary sites. Like I'll look hands, arms very briefly, but I automatically go to EJs, upper biceps, chests, like, you know, upper pecs, legs and feet, or drill. And a lot of times you can't even drill them because
it just pops back out.
It just pops back out. I couldn't tell you how many times that's happened where I use, you know, the yellow obese patient needle, which really it's just a large adult needle, you know, and yeah, there's 4 inches of adipose tissue. You can plug and drill as hard as you want. That thing's not sticking, you know? So yeah, I mean, like even at a BLS level, ventilating these patients, right? Ramping them and ventilating them, sitting them up at 30 degrees head elevated to actually ventilate their lungs. That's difficult.
Yep.
You know, like how do we overcome some of these challenges?
More people makes hopefully let her work, but unfortunately, sometimes getting more people doesn't work. You can try to call for more manpower, but sometimes it's just you and the patient.
Yeah, and that's right. Sometimes it's you, your partner, and the patient, and that's what you get, or you and a cop, or you and a family member, right? Until more patients or more, providers get there. I think like with treatment plans, it really gets sketchy. You really have to think outside the box. Like, okay, if this IV doesn't work, what is my secondary plan? What is my, tertiary plan? Like, you have to plan it out that far. Hey, this guy needs to get BVM'd. Okay. How am I going to do that? How is my BLS provider going to be able to do that? Do you guys have a big, concern with crew safety? Because that's like a big thing of mine too, right? Like, I've been on calls where we have stair chaired a 650 pounder up 3 flights of stairs. And I'm like, no, like never doing that again. And there was like 5 or 6 of us. It's like, nope, that was stupid. Never should have done that. There's been plenty of times where, that's it. Like there's been plenty of times where people have tipped over patients, just loading them into the stretcher, loading them into the ambulance. Like crew safety on an obese patient is a big concern.
People get broken. I mean, this is how you end up with bad backs, bad shoulders, bad.
Yeah.
And you don't think about it the day it happens, and then 2-3 weeks down the road, you're sitting in Ortho, New York, going for an MRI.
Right. Well, you're I know you're joking, but it's so true. It's so serious. Like, again, going back in the Wayback Machine, like there's been times where, we have loaded the patient in a Stokes basket in the hospital and then drove the ambulance and backed it right up to their back deck. So all we had to do was lift it like 6 inches from the stretcher and then just slide them through their house until we could get them, to where they need to go. And then like 18 people lifted up onto the bed or whatever. Like, yeah, it's wild, the things like removing walls. Like, how many times have you seen that in cardiac arrest? Like the hoarder's house with the 800-pounder in the back bedroom and you can't get them out, but you're like, okay, I'm going to secure this unseen. And then 23 minutes out of 25, they get pulses back. And now you're like, well, great. Now where am I going to go? Didn't that happen to you, Phil? Like, I feel like that's happened to you.
I think it has. It has. So, a little bit of a, story time. When I first became a medic, I was going, second due medic. I was in the fly car, and this woman was like easily 800. I mean, she was big, like Mama June big.
Oh man.
And it was, that Bermuda Triangle wedged between the shower and the toilet. And now when I say wedged, I don't mean like, little Mima, curled up in the ball and you got to like slide her out. No, I mean like 7 of us, trying to yank her up, and all the rolls are getting stuck in all these different spots. And the fire department ended up using I'm not a fireman, so don't laugh at me. Their big saw.
the big saw. Not the small saw, the big one.
That thing. And they cut the entire wall of the bathroom. And they're like, oh, just in case. And I look over at the monitor, and sure as shit, it's an organized rhythm.
Yeah, it's like, just imagine like doing, it was brought up in the chat, a couple things. They're making me laugh in the chat here, but vital signs, right? Just taking BLS vital signs, right? How hard is it to feel a pulse on an arm that's the size of my head, right? Or just finding a blood pressure cuff that fits.
When you use the thigh cuff on the forearm, it
Right.
just barely fits. Yeah.
Like, and who even has thigh cuffs nowadays? Shut up, you. Nobody cares.
All right. I see how it is.
Like, but yeah, like it's so difficult in just doing basic things. A blood pressure that we all take for granted is so hard on a bariatric patient, right? A difficulty breathing, obese patient is probably my worst nightmare. Mm-hmm. Especially when they're like CHFers and you walk in and they're pale and ashen and they're diaphoretic and like they're gargling and you're just like, please don't die. Like,
well, another thing is like patient compassion. Like, I can deal with a lot, but when it's like my 8th time lifting this person up, trying to put them in the rig, I kind of lose my patience.
That's fair.
So, I mean, it's kind of hard to explain, but like, don't be a dick.
On both sides, even.
Like, yeah, don't.
I'm not trying to sound like an asshole, but
listen.
But I'm gonna be.
So, like, you're sitting there and, you could say to yourself, oh, this fat fuck, blah, 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 fucking Shamu over here, got out of SeaWorld. I have a lot of them in my back pocket,
Sir, if you would just eat a salad, this would be so much easier.
Have you ever not gone to McDonald's?
Let's see, where the heck was it? So we were talking about loading and safety issues and stuff, and I have to bring in Blue Lion here. They go, stretcher broken. The company said it was the crew's fault. Half bolt was clean sheared. Now I have a hernia that's like a third testicle.
Oh, good.
So, yeah.
Damn.
I had a dude one time. If he was 650 pounds, he was an ounce, and we loaded him in the back of an ambulance. I did it by myself because by this point, by the time I got him out to the rig, because he walks slower than a tortoise. He's just
who walks patients nowadays.
So we got him in the ambulance. I lifted that son of a bitch in the back of the ambulance with myself. He goes, "Remind me never to fuck with you." And I was like, let's go to the hospital now. Yeah. Him and the stretcher, just like, poof.
I can't say any obese patients have ever fallen with me, which is like, that would be like, I would literally, my pacemaker would be firing off for like 10 hours after that with all the agita and stress that I would have. Like, it just, yeah, that's the way it would be. So anything else that you guys kind of want to add to the obese patient? Is there things that you guys have found that kind of help you through the bariatric obese patient contact?
Having used to been an obese patient, I could kind of feel feel where they're coming from, but also having been an obese patient, it's not my fault that you're obese. So shut the fuck up and do what I gotta do.
I think a lot of us have that sentiment, in the like, hey, I didn't make you this way, please be like, I'm one of those that like, I respect everybody. You're a human being. I'm here to provide a service. Like, I will treat you like gold. Don't give me that look, you fuck.
Why?
Like, don't even give me that look.
At me, you looking at him.
However, like, okay, what I do in private is not how I am in the field at all.
I would hope.
Yeah, him.
Butch. But
me, however.
Remember that time you were unconscious and sleeping? It's a good look on you. You should do it more often. I've turned into the, Maha Butchie version 2 at
which is terrible.
Lawyers.
That's exactly what they were hoping for.
I have compassion and I have caring for every patient
To a certain point.
until you piss me off.
I'm
See-
sorry. If like a psych patient spits on me, that's it. You know.
Okay, yes, that would set even me off, right?
Like,
So
I'm very patient, but you know, up until a certain point, like I've mostly lost my temper with psychs. You know, I can't say I've lost my temper with, you know, the human fucking boulder, but
I have compassion for every patient I have until you start getting verbally or borderline physically abusive with me. Then all bets are off, and then game on. You try to
yes,
fight me in the back of an ambulance, then we got a problem.
I have to agree with Butch. Like I will treat you like, you know, a king or a queen or whatever until you show me disrespect. Like I am here trying to provide a service to you in what you deemed was your time of need for me to come there. But if you're going to disrespect me, that's when all bets are off. Like,
and I will try to be respectful. Like I literally had some guy one day. I can't remember what the exact call was for, but he was an asshole the entire ride, and I was trying to make it comical, I guess, to try to break the ice with him. I was trying to be my usual sarcastic self. Like he pretty much told me, you know, go fuck myself and blah blah whatever. So I asked him what his name was. Basic information. Sir, what's your name? I was calling him sir, being respectful. Fuck you, you fucking asshole. I was like, so is that hyphenated? You know, like I was trying to, you know, make it funny, you know?
nice.
And it got down to the point. I was like, listen, if you don't tell me what your name is, they're not going to treat you at the hospital, and they're going to kick you back out as soon as you get there. You know, I got to the point where I became an asshole.
Right.
And that's when he was trying to like, fine, whatever. And I got the information, but I was trying to be decent with him.
Yep.
You know, but
yeah, I think like Phil, you were saying, you know, psychs, you lose your cool with psychs a lot, or not a lot, but you know, that's the patient population you lose your cool with. For me, it's drunks. Like, hands down, I could deal with psychs. I could deal with, you know, all that. Drunks. Drunks drive me crazy because it's like, okay, if you can't hold your liquor, that's one thing. That's fine. But don't do it in public. Like, and then don't be a dick when I have to come because you face planted on the bar. Like, don't. Just be humble. Be like, yup, I fucked up. I'll be good. That's it. But they always try and be a dick. Like,
one of my first STEMIs that I ever had in the field was a guy at a bar who was just sitting there and face planted. So we show up, and I was always taught, like, if you have somebody sitting down that passes out, presume cardiac. That's the way I was always taught. So I get in there, I was like doing my thing, and I put the 12 lead on. I'm like, sir, you're having a heart attack. We should go. I'm not going anywhere. And he started just like call me everything but white. I was like, all right, this is how it's going to be. So he ended up going to the hospital and being an asshole the entire ride to the hospital. I was trying to do stuff like, here, do this. I'm not doing this. I was like, all right, you could just die. I don't care. We're going to the hospital. So yeah.
Yeah, I like the first time in 3 years that I have lost my cool at the place that I work now, with this particular crew that I'm work often with. They're like, you know, wow, I've never seen that come out of you before. Like, yeah, yep, I literally, because, you know, the patient's badgering on and on, you know, about this, that, the other thing. And I'm like, I finally just was like, you could shut up. Like, you could shut up and just not talk. Oh, well, you know, nope. You have lost the right to speak to me as an adult. That's it. Just shut up. And like, I literally went into dad mode. Like, as soon as I said it, I was like, man, I feel like I just yelled at my kid. Like, it was so weird. And everyone's just like looking at me like, did he just like dad yell at this patient? Yes, I did. Yep. So going out of the obese population, I will throw it to you guys. I have 3 other patient populations. We're not going to get to all of them, but which one do you want to tackle next? Do you want to talk about the difficult airway patients, those stoma, home vent patients? Do you want to talk about the LVAD patient? Or do you want to talk about the MR patient?
Let's toss around an LVAD patient.
I've never dealt with an LVAD patient.
I have.
I have dealt with one. I have no idea if they are still alive or not. But LVAD is an acronym for left ventricular assist device. It literally, pumps your left ventricle for you mechanically. So, if you're in heart failure and are needing a heart transplant, this is what you will get because your left ventricle is completely and utterly useless. So this device will pump that, that fluid around your body for you. And they are amazing machines. Typically, they are short term, right? They're put in from the time that you find out, hey, you have heart failure, debilitating heart failure, you need a transplant, to the time you get your transplant, and that's it. But there's been cases where people have been on LVADs for a couple of years, which is wild. This is so wild, right? So, like, Phil, since you've dealt with the LVAD patient, like, typically, at least in our area, we know if there's an LVAD patient in the district, right? They will call the ambulance company and they'll say, hey, I have an LVAD, just letting you guys know it's at this address. Not everyone does that. The guy that I ended up having was in a district outside of ours. I went in for mutual aid and I just happened to walk in and he's got, the bag. And I'm like, what's the bag? And he's like, oh, it's my heart device. And I'm like, what's its name? And he's like, oh, it's an LVAD. And I'm like,
Where do I go now?
I'm like, crap. So kind of like, what is your experience with an LVAD and, kind of the overall thoughts about dealing with the LVAD patient?
Oh, we lost sound, Phil.
Uh-oh.
Lost sound, Phil.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can.
There you go.
All right. So I've done 2 inner facilities from a local hospital down to New York City with LVADs, and then I've done 1 911 call, like scene call for an LVAD. The biggest thing is, like, with the older, 2-year ago models, like, you couldn't get vital signs at all. You would just, you would have to just listen, make sure you hear the tick of the motor, and if they're talking to you, then they're stable. So that's like, muscle memory. You take the monitor out, you put them on, but you put them on the monitor, it just looks like you're sitting there shaking the fucking 12-lead cables up and down.
So it is kind of bizarre with LVADs, like the stuff that, like, you don't get to, like, it's the stuff that's absent in LVAD patients, right? Pulses. You don't feel a pulse with an LVAD patient, right? The impeller pumps that are spitting blood into the system run so fast that it washes out the heartbeat. So you don't feel mechanical pulses. Go ahead.
There is one that you actually do.
Really?
So it's called. This is actually the one where I did my scene call. This is the one she had. It's called the HeartMate 3.
Oh, see,
so,
that's new-ish.
So the motor actually pumps, like, systolically and diastolically.
Oh, that's cool.
So you can actually, it's not the best. Like, you can still kind of feel where, like, the motor kind of like overshoots it, but you can feel a very faint radial pulse. Like you'll feel the motor push the blood out, and then feel it almost kind of like suck it back.
Huh. That's new, because that never was the case. So I guess at this point, like, detailed history, what kind do you have?
And those ones actually you can get a blood pressure on, but you can't get like an EKG on.
So that was my next thing is typically LVAD patients, you can't register blood pressures. You can't register, whatever the heck they're called, pulses, right? EKGs are super wonky if you even get them, right? And defibrillation, they say you should not defibrillate LVADs. You can do CPR, but they don't want you defibrillating LVADs just because it can mess with the actual internal equipment. And you mess with that, like, if that battery goes dead, they're dead. It's that simple. Like, that is literally keeping them alive at that point. But you feel like you need to say something. You look like you want to say something.
Like I say, I've never dealt with an LVAD before, but yeah, we were always taught if that battery goes dead, then that patient's just is dead. Don't do the CPR. But it seems like I recently heard that the newer teaching is you can you can do the defibrillation and CPR on the patients, and for some reason I think I've heard that somewhere. I don't know why that's the new teaching now, but I thought I've heard that somewhere. With the newer models, you can do CPR and defibrillations, and
so
if you need to.
The HeartMate, for those of you listening, I did post a photo of the HeartMate 3 in the Discord in the general chat. So with the HeartMate 3, you can do CPR on. They're kind of iffy on you doing defibrillation on it, just because the LVAD's actually, it's connected by a magnet. It's not one solid piece. I might get a little nerdy here, Turek, because
I love when you get nerdy, because it means I don't have to.
So that magnet's connected by an electrical impulse from the motor. So their biggest thing is with defibrillation, when you shock it, it can throw that impulse off and disconnect the magnet from the actual device. So I know that the battery on the HeartMate 3 goes for about 24 hours without being plugged in.
Wow.
But it's recommended that you go no longer than 4 hours without a charged LVAD battery.
Yeah, that is one thing that, like, I have always been like, grab extra. Grab your power cord, grab everything. Because a lot of the hospitals, they don't have setups for LVADs, right? They don't have charging stations. They don't have batteries. They don't have any way for this person to deal with if that battery is going low other than plug it into the wall. So like you need and this is stuff for EMS to think about, right? Like you do it with brand new moms. Hey, do you have the baby's bag? Do you have clothes? Do you have food? Do you have whatever, diapers, all that stuff? You need to do the kind of same thing for LVAD patients. Like, hey, do you have your battery? Do you have your bag? Do you have your spare stuff? Like, what hospital do you want to go to? Because like a lot of the hospitals, they'll just outright say, yeah, no, we're not taking an LVAD patient.
So, interestingly enough, I didn't mean to cut you off, Butch.
I don't think he was talking.
So the only hospitals in New York State that can handle an LVAD to the fullest extent is New York Presbyterian and Sloan Kettering Medical Center,
which are both far away from us.
So
doesn't Rochester do LVADs as well? Not anymore? Okay.
So it's when a patient gets discharged home with an LVAD, they'll actually tell them like, you are going to Albany Med for any medical issue, or you're going to, you know, Syracuse for any medical issue that you have. It's not, you know, like they can't piecemeal, you know, like, oh, I'm a little nauseous, I'm going to go to, you know, some podunk 2-bed ER.
Right. And that's the thing. Like, that is one of those things, like, EMS providers need to tell people really quickly, like, hey, I'm coming to this local hospital with an LVAD patient, right? Because they might even be like, nope, don't even come here, right?
Yeah.
I walked into one being an EMT transporting an LVAD patient with my medic, and we just, you know, brought them in. This was the first time that we had ever seen an LVAD patient. And, you know, this was early in their, you know, in their use. And like, yeah, it was, why did you bring this patient here? What are we supposed to do with that? One nurse even was like, what is that? You know, because they had no freaking idea. So, you know, I think, you know, getting the ball rolling a little quicker, you can fly with LVADs. If they're really having a catastrophic problem, maybe it's worth a phone call to the flight team to be like, hey, let's fly them to the medical center that can actually handle this. You know, because most of them will try and go back to the place that they had it put in. But if that's, you know, if they drove down to the city and they live upstate and they're 3 hours away, they're not going to drive back to the city. They're going to call you and want to go to the local ER.
So 2 more things with LVADs before I go on a tangent until midnight.
It's all right. I'll just cut you off. It's fine.
That's fine. So there's a little controller on it sits like right outside their stomach. It's about, you know, like maybe this big. And it's literally like just a little small tablet. And every couple of seconds, it'll cycle through all the LVAD settings. So like you might get, you know, a low flow alarm. You might get, you know, a pressure mismatch alarm. And like, that's really all you can go off of for any like medical problems. So the person that I took up to one of the local hospitals around here with the LVAD, they were septic. And the only indicator that they were septic is that their flow rate was 0.3 slower than normal.
Yeah, which all of us would be like, okay, whatever. You know, that's wild.
You also can't overload them. So if you put an IV in them, they can only get 100 ml boluses.
Right, because you can't overload the actual motor and pump.
Right.
The motor goes off of a pressure sensor.
Yeah.
So when you slam them with fluid, it's going to actually stall the motor out until the pressure is relieved. So if you fill them up with too much fluid, that their heart's going to stop.
Wild.
So you have, you know, you're sitting there with the dial, you're like,
just at that point, just do it like a kid. Give them 20 ml boluses in a syringe. Be like, yep, here's 20. Let's suck out another 20. Here's 20. That's, yeah. At that point.
KVO it in at that point.
Right.
You know.
So from what I'm gaining, what I'm getting out of this entire conversation is we did a episode a while back, Maha's 12 leads for dummies, or Maha's EKGs for dummies. I forget what it exactly was called.
We should do another one soon.
We should do a LVAD for dummies by the Phil Foundation is what I'm hearing here. So he can really nerd out.
So after I took that, you know, scene call with the LVAD, like I spent days, you know, reading. The agency I worked for did a special CME because of me.
Yep.
like there's so much knowledge that goes into, a little tiny, fucking like blender motor.
Oh, dude, it's like my pacemaker. It
It's
is
insane.
wild how much these things can do that none of us would ever think about.
Yep.
It's insanely wild. So
So
go ahead, Phil. Sorry.
it'll be quick, I promise.
No, I don't care. I
So-
got all night.
The last major thing about LVADs is every patient has an LVAD care coordinator and an LVAD on-call doctor. And they have a special card that they carry. It'll either be attached to that little tablet remote control, or it'll be, like
Somewhere
Velcroed
near them.
on to their LVAD pack. And, most of the time the patient will go through the channels of like calling their on-call LVAD specialist and be like, hey, I'm getting a high pressure alarm on the LVAD. It keeps going off. Like, what do I do? But they're always available for us to call. And I mean, like, they'll break it down like Barney, like stupid person style.
Oh, I love that. I love when there is a phone number to call like that. Like, I love it for the pacemakers, right? We have the same thing. You call the patient's cardiologist. You're like, hey, I'm medic so-and-so. I'm here with, whoever they got, this is their number for the cardiac place. And you can ask so many questions about their pacemaker or this, that, the other thing, or device or all that other stuff. It's like, it is just wild what information is at our fingertips that we don't ever utilize because we don't know about it and no one tells us about it. So I'm going to jump down the rabbit hole here, Phil. Maybe you know about this. Maybe you have heard about this. I have never heard about this. Blue Lion, I asked a question on the chat. Any questions from you guys about the LVAD? Just throwing it out there. And Blue Lion says nuclear-powered LVADs. Is that a thing? Have you heard of that?
I don't think that's a thing.
Like, I've never heard of a nuclear-powered LVAD. I've only heard of battery-operated LVADs, but...
Yeah, I think like nuclear powered would, turn you into like a ghoul from the Fallout game series.
I mean, well, that would be so cool, right? Like, so cool. All right. So before we go, like before we end here, we're running long on the podcast end of things, but I want to talk to you guys specifically just really quick about MR patients and communicating with them, right? A lot of times there is a communication barrier, right? I can't say it's a language barrier, but a lot of them cannot communicate effectively to EMS or anybody at that, at that level. How do you guys kind of combat the communication challenge of the MR patient? Like, there's a lot of, we've talked, before about being patient with these, this certain patient population. How do you guys kind of navigate those communication challenges when they're either nonverbal or they kind of speak gibberish or whatever?
Excuse me.
Bless you.
There you go. One of the pet peeves I have with it is sometimes you see providers talking to them like they're like 2-year-old kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've seen that before. Well, obviously, unless they are 2-year-old children, but again, use the people that are around them that know what their nonverbal cues are, or what their language they're speaking are. Like parents and providers, they know what they're saying, they know what they're doing, they know what they're acting. They're the ones that are gonna know what's going on. Ask them, what does this mean? What are they saying?
Right.
Use those people.
Yeah.
Obviously, if they're out wandering the streets by themselves, you have no idea. Then you're gonna have to do what you can, the best you can. But use the people around them. They know what's going on.
And I mean, they're also, if they're nonverbal, I've noticed they are extremely, extremely smart at understanding what you say. you know, like you might have to dumb it down a little bit. Like there's been a lot of times where I've had like the nonverbal MR patient, you know, and I'll just stand there and be like, you know, does this hurt? And like I'll point to my head.
Yep.
And like, does this hurt? Point to my chest, you know, point to my stomach. Does this hurt? And I mean, like they'll either shake their head yes or no. A lot of them can, you know, write on a whiteboard or like a notepad.
Yeah,
So-
and I think using those nonverbal cues, right? So like if they're nonverbal and, you know, they're for whatever reason, doesn't matter, you know, using things like that, like, hey, you know, does anything hurt? They can understand you. They're just not going to speak to you. So, you know, looking for other cues. Are they wincing if you're touching something? Are they, you know, guarding or something of that nature where maybe they're favoring, you know, an area on their body? You know, having that detailed history from the, you know, what Butch said, that caregiver, you know, paid or family or whoever it might be, that can lead you into a lot of information, right? Finding out if they've been sick, finding out if they've been eating, what they've been eating, you know, all their different habits. It really is piecemealing a lot of information together and making the best judgment out of things, you know?
Another thing is like, you know, yes, you know, you have to dumb down a lot of stuff for patients with MR, but it's not, you know, like you're a total stranger. They're not used to you. You know, they're going to be afraid. They're going to be on edge. You know, they could become violent. But you have to understand it's not their doing. Like that's just how their brain functions.
Right. Yeah. And again, you talked at the open about triggers, right? We don't know what they are. We have to learn kind of how to operate around these people. There's a lot of times where, you know, they just need a ride to the ER and it's like, okay, I'm just going to sit here. I might put some stickers on them, but I'm not going to do anything, right? Unless, you know, absolutely need be. But sometimes it's just a ride, you know, let the hospital deal with, you know, the major issue going on if there's not something you need to, you know, seriously fix in the moment. So let's see. Looking at the chat here before we end, Chris says one of his neighbors are like that, had a bad accident and TBI, and his wife is amazing at telling us exactly what he wants, which is awesome, right? Use those caregivers. Blue Lion says sometimes they can simplify things. We all complicate. Absolutely. Like that is, you know, we overcomplicate a lot of things, right? We dumb it down. They simplify it. It's an easier way of understanding everything. WW2 Girl says, I had a patient that was deaf, had only a whiteboard. My partners and I didn't know any sign language, both frustrating for the patient and the providers. You know, again, communication's one of those things that we all take for granted. It's easy to just speak and listen. And then when you can't, because, you know, they speak Bangladesh and you speak English, that's frustrating to everybody. You know, when they're mute or they don't have, you know, communication and, you know, maybe they only use a whiteboard. I've done calls where we write back and forth on a whiteboard and that's the only way we communicate. It's hard, but it can be done, you know? Do you guys have anything else sorry to cut you off, Phil. Do you guys have anything else to add for the, you know, for the episode here?
I think I'm good.
Phil, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, you know, about like the deaf patient population. I think, you know, medic school, EMT school should be like basic sign language.
Yeah.
You know, like learning the sign for, like, I only know very few signs in ASL. Like I know like this means doctor or like
So
EMT, paramedic, whatever. Like this means like, I think this means headache. Like I know very like simple things, but
yeah, I 100% agree. I have always said that EMT and paramedic school should also have some And of course, we all say it should be a longer class, right? It should be, an actual education instead of these, whatever classes we have now. But like, we should be putting in there, Spanish. We should be putting in there ASL, maybe medical terminology for both. Even if it's a basic understanding, I think that would go such a long way in being able to communicate with our patient populations. It's crazy that me being 36 years old knows literally nothing about sign language. I couldn't tell you what a P is. I couldn't tell you what an A is. Couldn't tell you anything. My 7-year-old came home from school and could tell you the entire ASL alphabet, right? A to Z, because they practiced it. He doesn't know words, but if he wanted to spell his name, he could literally sign it out, MASON. He could do that. That's awesome. I think we all should have that, in our education. How many times could we have used that, in our careers, I agree. Police departments teach their officers Spanish, so why don't we do that for EMS and fire? Agreed. They should offer those types of classes, and it shouldn't just be like, oh, here's an hour CME on it. It should be a semester-long class. That's just my take on that. Do you guys have anything else to add? No? All right. So we're gonna end the podcast here for tonight. However, if you guys are good with it, give me a yes or a no. I prepared some trivia questions for end of tour. If you guys feel like staying on for another half an hour, I need a refill, so I'm gonna take a 5-minute recess. Thank you all for joining us for another Medic Materials podcast episode. Again, check out the merch page and share the show. Again, it is miraculous that we've gotten up to 20,000 downloads. It is still a small show. We're not Joe Rogan numbers here. However, the fact that, we're giving out such good information, in the silly manner that we do, I love this show. I love the people that we do it with. I love that you guys listen and watch us when we do it. So till next time, guys, stay strong. Stay tuned if you're watching End of Tour, and donuts.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you want more information on the podcast or to send us a call review, please visit medicmaterials.com/podcast. To learn more about earning continuing education credit from listening to this episode or others, check out Medic Materials CMEacademy.thinkific.com. We appreciate your continued dedication towards EMS education and helping us advance the field. See you next time.